It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Hari Bhartia. He is the founder and co-chairman of Jubilant Group, who runs companies in life sciences, energy, and food services with the exceptional chain of 350 plus outlets of Domino's Pizza throughout India. It's a pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you.
I think you're appropriate person to ask this. Your group has invested close to $500 million in the US in businesses. India is an emerging story. It will continue to be so in the coming decades. But if you look at the West and the economies, not only in North America but in Europe, they're taking a beating and they continue to take a beating. Where do you see the West going in terms of the economic growth?
Certainly, the growth has slowed down. You know, it's down to a level of 1 or 2%. But I think the challenge going forward is how do they rejuvenate the economy and bring it to faster growth. I think a slow developed world is also not good for India. I think it's important because this is a large customer base for us. But then if they do not grow, I think India needs to diversify its market, trade more with the emerging economies, with Africa, South America. I think that's very key. For India's growth story, I think we are growing at 8 to 9%. There will be blips. I think this year we will slow down. But looking at what we are trying to do and the potential that we have in terms of demographic advantage, in terms of kind of investment that we are putting into the inclusion, getting the rural areas to be contributing more into the economy, building the manufacturing sector for the long term. I see a good growth, sustainable growth for the next 10 years.
Your group of companies is valued about $3 billion or so. It's a fairly significant number. The question I'm trying to ask you is the consumption that Indian middle class has. We don't, if you compare to the population of 1.1 billion people, it's in the middle pyramid somewhere. When you look at the strategic growth plans for your companies, do you focus purely on the Indian consumption, or do you think still you have to look out of India for some years?
No, it depends on the kind of industry. If you look at our food services industry, it's purely focused towards the Indian market. And that market is growing at 15 to 20% in my view. Because when people come into the higher income level from lower to middle to upper middle, then you start seeing the consumption going up. And we have seen the India's growth story is also consumption driven. So we continue to focus on that market for growth. Now, if you look at our life science, it's really a global business. What do? We help countries reduce the healthcare cost by supplying products at a more competitive prices. And I think not only from India, but we also take some of our innovation and technology and our experience into the US market, build facilities here or buy facilities here, even to serve the markets. So our pharma sector, we will continue to grow in India while we look at West as a large market.
I also wanted to ask you to touch on the energy sector that you play an important role in that as well.
Yeah. See, for energy sector, what we invested in the last 15 years is India's exploration opportunities. See, India is fairly underexplored. I think there is a large potential to discover gas or oil. Whatever you discover has local consumption, because India will be short of energy for the next 50 years. So, and gas is good for climate change also. Our company has discovered gas in Krishna Godavari. We have discovered gas in places like Tripura, and we continue to put in large investment to see that if we can increase our reserves. So going forward, the idea is to increase reserve and serve the local market.
You know, you talked about India on a PPP basis is going to be third, or probably is already a third largest economy. But you also mentioned, which is very important to understand, is 40% of the population still is poverty or below poverty. When there is so much exuberance in the middle class, what do you think in terms of social responsibility for corporates like yours and many others? How can we uplift a broader population base?
Yeah. See, first, as an entrepreneur or a businessman, is our responsibility is to create a sustainable business. Now, when you create a sustainable business, you create sustainable jobs, and then we need to grow. When you grow, the job opportunities grow, and you contribute to the economy. How do we make it sustainable? We have to make sure that we serve the local community effectively without destroying the future generations' ability to be sustainable, because we are destroying anything in environment. So that consciousness is very important. But I think the biggest role that an entrepreneur or a businessman plays is to create a sustainable business which creates job opportunities. And I think that's what, in my view, businessmen are focusing in.
The next question is about your entrepreneurial abilities. When you were a student back in the IIT days, India wasn't on the global scene in terms of the capitalism that we see in India today. But now that you have businesses, pretty much all over the globe, the young in India are much more confident in their approach than in the older days. When you go out and you see a different reception for India and things Indian, what goes through your mind?
You are absolutely right. If I look at my 35 years of career in business, things have changed. Indian products, Indian services were never respected 35 years back. We were a very closed economy. If you had to import something, you paid duty of 100%. I think what changed is, in the early 90s, when we opened up, we allowed Indians to compete with Indians and with the global market. When you have competition, the context changes. You innovate for survival. I think Indian mind is a brilliant mind. You have to give them a right ecosystem. The ecosystem is giving them education, giving them good infrastructure, giving them capabilities to compete. Slowly, I think in the last 20 years, we have infiltrated that concept in India. The Indian entrepreneur has not only done well in India, he's gone out and done innovation with the international markets and with the customers, gained huge respect. So I think going forward, we don't have to sell India anymore. It's a large economy, but we have to keep one thing in mind, that this growth will not be sustainable unless we take everybody along. That means we have to be inclusive. We have to make sure that the people who do not have the resources are also supported through this growth phase. And if that does not happen, we'll have issues like we are starting to see in almost 80 to 100 districts, where we see starting of the Naxal movement. Why does it happen? If people don't have jobs, if they don't have livelihoods, where will they go? So I think it's very important to continue this inclusive agenda in India while we focus on growth.
I want to take you back to your campus days. I'm sure there are so many memories you will share with us, but I was wondering if you'd like to share. It's because it's always interesting for the audience to listen from people like you. An anecdote from your days at the campus that you think really inspired you, a teacher or an incident that helped you really in the long term as a professional, as an entrepreneur?
When you go into the IIT system, you realize that you are not a smart guy anymore. You have people who are much smarter than you, much more intelligent. So that humility is very important. The first thing you learn when you go into an IIT is humility. And I remember in the end of first year, I had done very poorly. So the dean of students at that point of time called me in his room and said, "Hari, if you do not wake up, then you may not go to the second year." So I think some of those incidences are in my memory that look, that it's not only about getting into IIT, you have to continue to do good work. And I have kept in touch with him, with the dean, and I got involved with him when I became the chair of the IIT Kanpur. And so I have amazing respect for this whole IIT system itself, because it has not only produced some brilliant entrepreneurs globally, but I think the whole system was designed for excellence. And our role is to continue to give back in whatever form we can, because we have been the lucky few. You know, we got educated, we were paid only 500 rupees a semester. Now, where in the world can you get a world-class education for 500 rupees? So if you got that education, you better give back something.
It's been a true pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoyed talking.